Hey, and welcome to the Refresh Podcast. My name is Kris and I am the pastor here at the Mandan Adventist Church in Mandan, North Dakota. We started a new thing with our church podcast, and that is to share monthly episodes from our Tuesday night refresh. But since these will air after the fact, we just call them Refresh. I'm glad that you're tuning into this one. In this episode, we're talking with my friend Elena Harris, who is a decluttering coach. She'll share a bit more about what that is in a few moments. In our conversation, we explore the intersection of cleaning house and how that relates to spirituality and specifically our Christianity. I know that you'll be blessed by this conversation. I want to invite you to tune in to Tuesday Night Refresh, as you'll be able to be part of the discussion that can't take place on YouTube. But this is always here if you missed out and want to catch up. Without further ado, here is the conversation. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and just introduce yourself to us and we can get to know you a bit.
Yeah, so my name is Elena Harris and I live in Walla Walla, Washington. I have a small decluttering business and professional organizing, so I go into people's homes and help them get rid of the excess and make systems so that they can keep things organized. A little bit about me. I like indoor plants, and my favorite type of exercise is yoga. I don't run very much anymore, as many of you may have slowed down doing, but yoga feels nice. So, and I like reading, and yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And you're, for those of you who may not know, she is Kisa's cousin. So she's, for me at least, family through marriage. The conversation this evening is about decluttering. And I'm sure many of us can relate to this, that we have that one room, that one closet, that one drawer, or maybe it's a couple, maybe it's like a whole garage that is just so overwhelming. You don't want to go in there, or if you go in there, you go in quickly. You try not to make eye contact with the mess that's in there, and then you scurry right out. And so we're going to talk a little bit about decluttering because Elena is a decluttering coach, and she can tell us a little bit more about exactly what that is. But that's going to be the topic of tonight's conversation. And then more specifically, how decluttering relates to spirituality as well, or how there are aspects of decluttering and spirituality that intersect with one another. So Elena, what does a decluttering coach do?
Yeah, so I help people decide what to keep and what to get rid of. So that looks like, for example, if we're just doing their kitchen, I would come in, we would go, through the boxes that aren't supposed to be in there first, sort through them. I like, this is bathroom stuff. Let's take it to the bathroom. This is, storage stuff that needs to find a home in the garage. And then we'd like clear the counters. And then take maybe category by category. Let's do the pots and pans. Do you need each of these pots and pans? Let's look at everything you have, pick out some for donation, and then organize the keepers back in. Maybe that would mean we get a organizing tray or bin of some kind to put those things back in so they're easier to get in and out. Um, and then, then you have all your things organized into your space in a better way, and a lot of the excess removed, either thrown away or donation. I've also helped a couple people do yard sales before. So yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of what a decluttering coach and organizer does.
Cool. You don't clean for people though, right? That's an important distinction.
There's always a tiny bit of cleaning involved. So like I said, if we're doing pots and pans that day, like I'm going to be wiping out the cupboard that we're doing, or maybe we need to wipe off the counter on top so we have a place to sort, but I'm not, deep cleaning your oven.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Cool. And I guess then a good follow-up for that would be, what got you passionate about decluttering? Decluttering seems like such a niche. It's definitely not like a college class that you can take, or maybe it is. I don't know. I didn't see it in the syllabus when I enrolled. So yeah, where did the idea of becoming a decluttering coach come from, and what is the passion behind it?
So, another thing about me, I attended Walla Walla University. I graduated with a business degree, but I'll back it up a little bit. So, I got passionate about organizing, I think, from a very young age. My dad's pretty organized, and my mom wants to be organized, but she keeps too much stuff. And so I was kind of born with organizing tendencies with also a home that had a lot of stuff in it. So I was like, oh, my room's going to be organized. My stuff's going to be clean. And so I've been told, like, my parents been like, I remember you laying out all your Barbies by color coded and things like that. And so I've always been pretty organized. But I didn't ever think of that as a job. So then when I got into college, I liked writing, so I thought I would be an English teacher or something. So I was taking some education classes along with my general studies classes, and I thought that was going to be the thing. So then I went on a mission trip, or a mission year, I should say, to Peru, and I did some student teaching, and I realized I like the teaching part that is the organizing part. So, like, planning and decorating the classroom, and then, like, the day after day, "So, kids, sit down. You gotta learn this thing that you don't care that much about." I was like, "This is not for me." So I got back from that year, and I was like, "I know I wanna, teach people things, and I know I like organizing, so how can I, make that a thing?" So that summer after coming back, I was around that time, Marie Kondo was super popular, and she's, like, a multimillionaire, and she was making all this money organizing. I was like, "Organizing is a thing that people can do to make money." So then I switched my major to business, and I started, my business. I made my website. I had a couple of clients. My first client was a college friend of mine. I helped her organize her room, and, yeah, I think I am really passionate about it because growing up, I saw how much stress it caused people in my life. And and it's all just this idea of I need this stuff causing them stress. So if you can just let go of that mindset of I need all these things as backups, then you can go from having more stuff than you need, being stressed out, cleaning is difficult, finding things is difficult to like you still have everything you need, but then it's also you can feel peace and function well. So just getting people from that mindset shift, I feel like is my main passion and why I really like this work.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that be challenging probably for a lot of your clients as they process the going through clutter, so to speak, and what might seem like trash for one person might be treasure to someone else. And have you found have you found it challenging to help people do this? Or maybe a better question would be like you've worked with a number of clients. Are there a couple of stories that stand out particularly in which, there was a clear sort of transformation for that person where they realized, "Oh yeah, you know what? I don't need all that stuff." I mean, just like I remember when you visited us a couple of years ago, we had a bunch of mail just piled up on the dining room table, and for you guys watching and wanting to judge, it wasn't that much. It was just a good amount, and we just failed to really go through it. And you were like, "Oh, let's sort this out." And I just remember like, man, this is so practical, so quick, so easy to just say, "Oh yeah, this is not important. This is trash. Get rid of this. Oh, this is important. Keep that," and so on. But yeah, any stories that you could share?
Yeah, so I think later we're gonna get a little bit more into the spiritual aspects of
Yeah.
decluttering, but to start out with this story that's super practical. Doesn't matter what you believe, this is a good story that is gonna motivate you. So, um, one of my best clients and longest term, best to work with, my favorite anyway, she, let's call her Angie. Our first session together, she's like, "Oh, I have this 2 storage units, and one of them I don't even know what's in it." And I was like, "Next time we meet, let's meet there and just see what's in it, you know?" So we went there, and there was, like, maybe 12 boxes in this big storage unit, and we just loaded all 12 boxes into her car, and then it was empty, and then she could stop paying for it. And it was like this super quick, like, one-day thing where she was going from paying, like, I think that was her smaller storage unit, so she went from paying, like, $100 a month for that storage unit to not paying that in just one day. And it's just the procrastination of, like, "I'm not sure what's in there, I don't know how long it'll take me to go through it," like, she had had a divorce, so it was stuff that her ex-husband had put in there at some point, and then she didn't know what it was. It's really easy to procrastinate stuff like that, and especially in that case where it's, like, an external payment that you're having to make that's outside of your rent or your mortgage, it's like, that is such an easy win that's gonna relieve so much weight. Even if your garage gets more cluttered, that payment that you know you're making and that, like, "Oh, I have to drive to the storage unit and see what's in there and then unload it and throw it away, blah, blah, blah." There's so many steps to discourage you from doing it. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, that was a huge win, first time. So if you have maybe you don't have a storage unit, but maybe you have, like, a bonus room where you keep the door closed and you're like, "I don't even know what's in there, I don't even wanna look." Maybe just, like, just to take the first step of, like, open the door, see what's in there, maybe make a list of things that you need to do so you can kind of, mentalize the task even before you do it. Because sometimes we make a task bigger than it really is. Um, yeah, but that's the first story, and I think that's really practical.
Yeah.
So, no matter what you're struggling with, like, remember that it's practical as well as helpful for all the other areas of your life.
Right. Yeah, that's a cool story, especially the part that stands out there for me is the $100 a month payment. And so, even that financial expense of having more clutter or having more stuff that you don't pay attention to, like that it could actually be costing you.
Yeah, and in a spiritual sense, like, the more money you have caught up in your stuff, the more stress you feel about that and the less you feel like, "Oh," when there's offering that goes around the church, you're like, "I don't have extra money for that because I have all these bills." And a lot of those bills are actually tied in our clutter. If you've got an RV that you're paying to store or a storage unit or you have a garage or you have to pay for a bigger apartment because you have so much stuff, all those little things, we don't think of that as clutter cost financially, but a lot of those bills are tied. Or if you have, like, a bunch of subscriptions, like a Netflix and an Amazon and you don't use one of them and you're just paying for it because you don't wanna take the time to look at those bills, you're limiting your resources for generosity with just not looking at your clutter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good insight, especially the digital decluttering there, especially in the context of unnecessary subscriptions and things like that. I think that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Any other stories that you can share, like, um
Yeah, so I think going back to why I'm really passionate about decluttering, I think I've had a couple of clients where you start working with them, they're paying you to work with them, and it's a really like they're motivated, but when you actually start going through item by item, they're like, "Oh, I can't let that go. Oh, I bought that for a bunch of money, so I can't let it go even though I don't like it." Or my mom gave me this thing, so even though I don't want to use it, I can't get rid of it. And so there's a lot of excuses and, emotional attachment to your stuff. And then over time, once maybe they get one closet organized or they get the entryway organized, they start to see those little wins. And then eventually they get to the point where during one session they're like, "Oh, garbage, donate, keep garbage." And they just get so much faster at letting those things go. I think that's one of the most rewarding things for me because it's not just that they're letting more stuff go faster, it's that they're learning what's important to them. Before they didn't know what was important to them, they think everything is important, therefore nothing is important. But once you get to the point where you're like, "Okay, this book I'm gonna keep because I really wanna read it," then you actually start reading more. And you let go of the books that you don't care about that are just cluttering up space, and you actually start doing more with the things that you do like, and because you know what you want. So I feel like that's, um, another common thread, with my clients that I think is something that I really love to see.
yeah. Tell me a little bit about, like, the grandparent who they they had some stuff in their attic and just the time and things like that that came from being able to clear all that out?
Yeah, so I'm still working with them. I have a client named Nora, and she and her husband are getting a little older, and their kids were like, "You need to find an organizer because we don't want to deal with your house full of stuff from top to bottom." And they're getting a little older. It's harder for them to move. The husband just had knee surgery like last week, so now he can't. He's not stuck on the main floor. He can't go upstairs or downstairs. But yeah, so a couple of months ago, we started kind of making some plans, like what's your highest priority? And one of the things they decided was our attic. They can't get up there anymore. They used to use it for like storing their suitcases and empty boxes for electronics and things, but they can't get up the stairs into the attic anymore. So like we need to declutter that and empty it. And so I don't know how many sessions it took. Maybe like 8 sessions, but we went through everything. It was a small, like, kind of slightly crouch, a pretty big attic, but not like an upstairs kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it was full of boxes. I would also say like 20, 40% of it, somewhere in there is just empty boxes that they were just storing, just in case. Just in case we wanna sell that TV, just in case we need some extra boxes from moving or whatever. So it's just full of boxes plus, sentimental items from their kids and way more suitcases than anybody needs. And so we completely emptied it. There's nothing up there anymore. And so that whole weight of like, "Oh, when are we gonna get to that?" Or if they decide they need to downsize or if one of them needs to go into a nursing home or something like that, somebody's gonna have to go through that entire attic. But now they know whatever happens, that space is completely clutter free. There's nothing in there. If they have to move, then it's like, "Oh, we don't need to check the attic. It's good." So I think, yeah, it's really causes a lot of peace to get those to-do list items off your list. And also, and not just for yourself, but for future generations. Um, there's a there's a book about Swedish death cleaning, which it sounds funny and
Yeah.
weird, but it's about decluttering for your kids. While you're alive, prepare your home for when you're gone so that maybe you have a couple sentimental boxes that are labeled like, "Oh, these are from my childhood. This is from your childhood," like and things like that. But otherwise, not having a bunch of stuff that you don't use. You have your own clothes, you have your kitchen equipment, and then you have, some nice sentimental things for your kids to look through and enjoy rather than an attic and a basement and a garage packed full of boxes where the kids are just gonna be like, "I wanna throw this all away. I don't even wanna find the sentimental treasures in this because it's too much."
Right.
So,
Cool.
yeah, it's not only a blessing for ourselves, it's also a blessing for others.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think many of us can relate to yeah, to seeing, what our family might have at home or our parents. I know my mom just went through a big move, and I'm not gonna talk too much about that because I'll get into trouble. But yeah, like it just very overwhelming and at times and like thankful for good help, but also just a realization of like, yeah, there is a lot here. There's a lot that you accumulate over the years. I remember when we moved from South Africa to the United States, it was a challenge because we thought we had to take all this stuff. We had furniture and keepsakes and toys and trinkets and all kinds of stuff. And, fortunately, we couldn't bring any of the electronics because of compatibility. So that was a blessing, but we still ended up with so much stuff coming stateside. And just remember we both reflected on like, man, why did we pack all this stuff? Why do we need all this stuff? And like every time that Kisa and I have moved too, you're like, why do we have all this stuff just kind of sitting here? And like, so I feel like every time we move, there's an opportunity for getting rid of stuff and so on.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's definitely a deeper layer here as well, and that's sort of the meat of the conversation that we want to get into. But how have you found through the people that you've helped, through clients that you have helped and assisted, what are some of the spiritual takeaways that you have seen in the process?
Um, so for one, I think the emotional weight removed when you have less clutter, I think is huge. I mean, it's emotional, but emotions and the spiritual go together so much. If you can't relax at home, how are you going to feel like you want to spend time with God or, be kind to your spouse or, play on the floor with your kids if you're like, nope, I've got too much to do. There's stuff everywhere. You can't relax. Um, just that peace of mind. Home is supposed to be a place of relaxation and care, and if you're making it into a storage warehouse instead of a place where you can thrive, it you can't do that. Kind of like the idea of, your body is a temple, your house is an extension of your body. So, if you're gonna, eat healthy food and drink lots of water and go to bed on time, like, the same thing is true for your home. You shouldn't be, cleaning the toilet and keeping the floorways clear. All of that impacts your physical and emotional health so much, which all of that impacts your spiritual health. So, I think that's a big point. And also we kinda touched on this earlier, the idea of, like, um, financial generosity is very much dependent on your clutter. Um, and I think so having a scarcity mindset versus a generous mindset. So, as a scarcity mindset says, whether you have a lot of clutter or you're hoarding money, either of those, it's like, I have to have this amount of money in my bank account, or I have to have this many batteries in my battery drawer to feel safe, to feel secure. I have to have backup tools in case I break down. And that's also like an element that you don't trust God to provide those things when you need them, or you don't trust other people in your community to provide those things if you need them. Like, could you ask a neighbor? Could you pray for God to provide it when you need it rather than having all of these backups around you? And that opposite of that scarcity mindset is a generous mindset of like, maybe I have all these backup tools because I do have this space, but can I give those away to somebody if they ask me to borrow them and, like, not worry if they give them back or not? Or, like, if God, wants me to donate more money or, committing to tithe, do you have the mindset that says, "Yes, I trust you with this stuff," versus, "No, this is my stuff, I have to have this stuff." And that mindset really impacts a lot of your decisions, not just with clutter, but everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. There is, um, yeah, there is a story in the Bible that sort of comes to mind for me as we talk about this, and it's in Luke chapter 12, verse 16 to 21, where Jesus tells the story about a rich man. And I'll just read it to us. It says, "Then he told them a story. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. And he said to himself, 'What should I do? I don't have room for all of my crops.' And then he said, 'I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for?' Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God." So, sort of an interesting story. And one of the things that I think, and would love for you to share some of your insights into it, but just one of the things that sort of stand out to me, maybe contextually, that's interesting is just if you listen to that story or if you read it yourself, you just notice how many references there is to me and and even this whole dialogue with myself, which as I recall, and don't quote me on it, but as I recall, in ancient Near East context, Jesus's time context, very sort of unheard of that someone would be so self-oriented because the community would often want to pull together, and so but there's no like consultation of the neighbors. There's just sort of like this hoarding of wealth for oneself. And yeah, I don't know if you have any insights on that story as well and how you think it relates to some of the aspects of decluttering.
Yeah, the idea of like, "Oh, you're gonna die, so who's gonna get all your stuff?"
Mm.
I think is it's so easy to be like, "Oh, we need this stuff because what if, what if we go on a trip and we need this extra suitcase?" Or, what if we but we don't ask the question of, what if there's somebody down at the homeless shelter who needs this sweatshirt? What if there's somebody at my church who doesn't have enough tools to, fix their car? Like, we're always thinking about what if scenarios for ourselves, and we're never thinking about what if scenarios for other people. And oftentimes our what if scenarios don't come true. So then we just have all this stuff that when we die, it's gonna get taken to donate. It's gonna get, passed on to our kids that are gonna have to sort through it. And, think realizing that all those what ifs, I mean, if it's not a like, what if, and it's probably gonna happen next month, where oftentimes our what ifs are like, it could happen in the next 10 years. I might need this thing. It's like, that's not gonna happen. And if it did, you have the resources and the community to support you to get what you need when you need it. We don't always have to have everything possible to support ourselves in whatever scenario that might come up. Um, yeah, that idea of like I is very that scarcity mindset and a selfish mindset versus a godly mindset.
Yeah, yeah. And with that being said, I remember it's just sort of like in the lead up to this conversation, we talked about, it's not necessarily, we talked about minimalism and decluttering and hoarding, all sort of in a relationship to one another. And that it's not necessarily that you are more godly the more minimalistic you are, right? But just more so as you have emphasized that it's the generosity.
Yeah, because if you're I just watched a video, actually, no, it's the one you sent to me, but a video of Kim Kardashian where she has this, like, it looks super minimal. She's got, like, a super white plain house, her cars are gray, and there's not, little piles of stuff everywhere. But, I mean, she's got these, like, multi-million dollar couches, 3 cars, all painted so they match her house, like, it looks minimal, but it's actually super maximalistic. She has a lot of stuff, and all those things cost a lot of money, which, takes a lot of emotional energy. Like, "Oh, should I spend all this money on this car? Yes, I will." And then you're thinking about, was it worth it and all this stuff. Um, and the same thing is true with, yeah, somebody who's hoarding. Like, they might look poor, but they've got all this stuff that they're trying to keep just in case, and then therefore they're stressed out, they can't relax. So both of those are examples of like they have more than they need and they're in a scarcity mindset. I have to have status. I have to have these backup things. I have to have 3 cars. I have to have 3 lipsticks. Like, it doesn't matter what the thing is, but if your mindset is, I have to have this to feel safe or to feel seen or to feel important, um, and even if your version of that is a travel fund or, I have to have hiking shoes because my tennis shoes aren't good enough, like whatever it is for you, if you're thinking that mindset, it's the opposite of the mindset of what I have is enough, God will take care of me. And yeah, being open to receiving from others and giving to others rather than just thinking about ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that that attitude of, yeah, like you said, it's not necessarily about being hyper minimalist because minimalism can totally be co-opted into sort of a wealth hoarding mentality. And I think, yeah, I think there are many people who have sort of looked at that aspect of it and then, but that more so that the biblical notion or the biblical principle here or the Jesus likeness about it is the ability to be more generous, the ability to, as you have mentioned, hold your belongings more loosely or have have a more looser relationship with it, that it's not tying you down, bogging you down, imprisoning you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and you just reminded me too of, both of those examples that I gave, like Kim Kardashian's house versus a hoarder's house. Neither of those apply to me. I don't struggle with either of those. But what I struggle with is needing to control my environment. So, like, if I have people over and they have dirt on their shoes, or, if I in the future when I have kids and I'm like gonna be like, "Oh no, grandpa gave you this toy, but I don't like this toy. We have too many toys. It's going away," like that. I struggle with that need to control my home and make sure it's clean and make sure it's organized and that there is no clutter. And so then my version of that mindset shift to a less scarcity mindset is, God, even when there's clutter, even when it's unorganized, I choose to trust you. I can't control my environment 100%. I'm going to give that to you. And that's the struggle that I deal with. Um, but I help people with, their struggle of I need to have this thing and that thing, and to the point where their home no longer works anymore. But my struggle and their struggle, neither of them is better than the other, but we all struggle with different things. So learning to let go of control and give the control to God. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. So yeah, maybe on a more practical spiritual application, if that's possible, you talked a little bit about like, yeah, your struggle for control there. And I think we can all relate to that. I know that, when the house is dirty, it's definitely harder to want to invite people over and or like the Keith and I are always thankful for the pressure that receiving guests apply because then it's like, oh, we gotta clean up. Or we'll just have like a crazy day, like if the office, the studio in which I'm sitting in here downstairs, if it gets like too crowded, too messy, like it's like, okay, it's time. And we'll just get that bug. But yeah, just spiritually, what are some benefits or things that you think you yourself have taken away from being intentional about decluttering, and maybe even things that you have seen in others that you think our listeners would benefit from as well?
Yeah, well, going back to that idea of, like, holding your belongings loosely,
Mm.
um, because I get so many donations and I can look at those donations before I take them, and I can, like, pick things out if I want them. So if I have a lady who donates a bunch of clothes that are my size, I can be like, "Oh, do I like any of these?" So I pick them out and I keep them.
Mm.
And that flow of, free things, so I get free things and then I donate things, which that cycle makes me able to let more stuff go easier. So, like, that holding of things loosely, like, if I get a pair of pants that I'm like, "Oh, these aren't my favorite," so then I donate them and later I might regret it. I'm like, "Oh, wait, I miss those pants." But, like, I don't get so emotionally attached to that stuff because I have what I need and I know there's more coming my way. And even if you don't have free stuff coming into your car all the time like I do, like, learning that mindset of, like, God has things coming my way,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He's gonna bring things into my life when I need them. So, like, I don't need to buy this extra thing because right now, because I don't need it right now, I can wait. Or, maybe my neighbor has this that I can borrow, so I'll wait. So just, like, learning to let things go easier because you trust that they'll come back to you when you need them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Kinda sounds karma-y, but I think it's true of God
Right.
for sure.
No, I think there is, sort of the golden rule of Jesus, do unto others as you would like to have done unto you, and those kinds of things, giving and taking. I think there's definitely biblical principles in there as well. So this might be a little bit of an off the wall question, but it was when you mentioned the pants, and I wanted to sort of chip in and say for guys, that might be like those cables that you've been holding on to, or like those Harbor Freight tools that you've been holding on to. And what would you just sort of like, I think, advice for men? Because typically, I think as men, we don't think that we do hoard much. And then you go into a man's garage and you just see all this stuff, and there's boxes with tools. Now, some men are really good about this, like super organized, and like the wrenches are just like packed neatly and all of these things. But there's still an over an abundance of things there. I don't know if you have just like a short tip there for men as they deal with it.
Yeah, well, I would say the first example that comes to mind for me is, like, I've got underneath my workbench is just piled high with 2x4s and chips of wood and stuff that I might use for something sometime. That's the example that comes to mind for me. But I guess, yeah. So first of all, I think when I'm working with clients one on one, I'm always like, do you feel stressed out by the space? If you don't feel stressed out by your garage and you feel like it's organized and like it's okay if you have some tools that you're not using. If they're not in your way, it's not causing you stress, no worries. But if your garage is so full that you can't use your tools, that's when it's like, well, okay, so in order to give you that purpose, that space back to do the things you want to do with the items that you're keeping, we have to let some of the items go. So, or another example of that might be like, okay, maybe you have room to do your work stuff in the garage, but your wife wants to set up a little workout corner and there's no room for her to do that. So you're like, but I need all my tools. Well, it's like, could you, get rid of one workbench and consolidate it into one? Look at all, go through all your tools and be like, okay, which ones do I actually use? And you might instead of getting rid of those all at once, be like, okay, I'm gonna get a big tote and throw all the tools that I think I don't need in here and save that in one corner for a couple months. And then if I haven't gotten into that tote to see if I need them, then I know I don't need them. So then you can let them go. Um, but yeah, it doesn't matter what the category is, whether it's kitchen supplies or garage supplies or clothes or books, um, or even like digital music files or audio files or, depend whatever you keep a lot of. If it's causing you stress, look through it and see if you can let some of it go. And if it's not causing you stress, you can focus on some other area for a while. But yeah, it doesn't clutter is not gendered for sure.
Yeah. I really like that idea of what you mentioned, like the chaos, the internal chaos or the stress that you're feeling from the external chaos. So if you walk into, men walk into the garage, or if it's that bedroom, if it's that storage unit, whatever it might be, that there's that internal chaos that then begins to take place at sort of at a heart level. Maybe you feel sick to your stomach and so on. And those who are attending this, I don't know what I would call this, like a live podcast or whatever. Uh, w- they we looked at Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 to 30 a couple of weeks ago, and just this invitation that Jesus has, and the context of the story is just before this, there is some discussion about about Sabbath and the principles of Sabbath, and right after there's a discussion about Sabbath, and right here in the center of these two stories, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." And I like how Eugene Peterson in the message says it. Where he uses the phrase, "Come and learn the unforced rhythms of grace from me." And I just it's really just interesting, but, we talk about Sabbath, we talk about rest, and Sabbath sort of this being this invitation into the grace of God, a time for rest, a time to set aside. How would you say that decluttering, even like small acts of like, say 10-minute decluttering sessions, how even those could be in some way bring rest for the soul? And do you think that decluttering and discipleship can go hand in hand in that way?
Yeah. So there's 2 points I wanna make. One, going back to that Bible verse, I've never thought about this before until you just read it, but that idea of our burdens being heavy to ourselves and God's yoke, which could also be called a burden,
Yeah,
God's burden is light.
right.
Um, if you apply that to decluttering, like, when we give up our burden of having so much stuff that we're overwhelmed by it, we get the gift back from God of, yeah, his yoke is still a yoke. It's still something to pull. It's work. It's still something, but it's lighter than what you had before. So in this case, it's like You think having all this stuff, backup stuff, is gonna make you have something, your supplies on your back in your backpack. You think that's important, but when you give that to God and you have less stuff, it's still some sort of a burden. It's still a yoke, but it's so much lighter. We have to trust God to give us what we need, but that is such a lighter burden to bear. That trust in God. I might not have everything I need right now, but it's a lighter burden than having to have all that stuff. So, it's God's burden is still something of a burden, but it's so much lighter than what we think is the best solution.
Yeah.
I love thinking about that verse with decluttering. But going back to the idea of Sabbath, um, I think the whole idea of Sabbath is about trusting God too. When we trust God with Sabbath, we're saying, I trust you that I'm going to have the food and money that I need by not working on that day. I'm going to choose to trust you and rest. And the same thing is true with decluttering. I'm going to choose to let this go so that I can have you providing my needs, right? So, um, they're both practices in trust in God. The Sabbath is time trust,
Yeah.
and decluttering is like resource trust. I trust you with the resources that I'm going to get or not have. Um, and they're both important. We have to rest. We have to have space in our home. Both of those things are essential to being healthy. And God knew that. That's why, He gives us the Sabbath. And He also doesn't, flood our lives with a bunch of consumerist things. He wants us to just have what we need. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. If someone is listening and thinking, man, that's me. My life is cluttered. My house is cluttered. My attic looks crazy. Or we're in the Midwest here, so basements are just, filled with stuff. Um, where would you say they should begin?
So I came up with this method called the 4 Ps of decluttering. And I think it's sometimes people don't like this idea because it seems inefficient. But if you are struggling with getting started, it is the thing to get you started. You can always go back and say, "Oh, I'm going to work on this corner of this room and not use the 4 Ps." But if you're feeling overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, this is a great place to start. So the 4 Ps of decluttering is pause, pick, purge, and put away. So for step number one, if you're like, my home is driving me crazy, I need to let some stuff go, I don't know where to start, just pause, take a deep breath. You're still okay. Everything's going to be fine. And pick. So pick the closest thing to you up that's out of place. So for example, for me, I have this pen that's out on my desk. Since I'm sitting at my desk and I'm thinking about it, I'm going to pick this up. And then the next step is purge. So a lot of people like to skip from pick to put away. So you're like, oh, I have this thing. I'm going to go put it away where it goes.
Yeah.
But a lot of us forget this purge part, which is basically my whole job is like, okay, do you actually need this at your house at all? So do you like this pen? Does it work? Maybe you need to test it on a scrap piece of paper, see if it works or not. And then once you decided if it's a keep pen or a get rid of pen, then you put it where it needs to go. If it's a keep pen, for me, I'm going to put it in the pen cup holder on my desk. But if you decide this is a pen that doesn't work, then you would throw it away. And if it's a pen that works, but you don't like it, then you could put it in a bag to donate by your front door or in your car. And then you can repeat the 4 steps again. So, maybe you took this to your car because you're going to put it in your donate bag that's in your car. You could start the process over and pick the first thing in your car that you see is out of place. Maybe there's a napkin on the floor in your car. And you take that and you take it inside and you throw it away. And you could just keep doing that. And you could do that, you could set a 20-minute timer, a 5-minute timer, and just do the 4 Ps for a little bit. Or you could go back to where you were before. So if I did start it at my desk, when I put this away, I could come back to my desk and pick up the next thing that's out of place. But I feel like that eliminates the overwhelm and chaos for people a little bit because sometimes you try to sort maybe your whole kitchen and then put everything away when you're done, but that takes, 5 hours. And you can't do that in 20 minutes. So instead, just do one item at a time. And that way you don't make piles of stuff everywhere that you need to put away. You just put it fully away and then come back to the kitchen. which is why some people think it's inefficient because you're walking all over your house, but you're actually fully completing each task as you're doing it. You're not making future jobs for yourself like, "Oh, now I need to go put that whole bathroom pile away." You're just like, bathroom, kitchen." So and there's other strategies you can do, but if you're overwhelmed, I think that is a great place to start.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, setting maybe a alarm on your phone, doing the 4 Ps, all of that. Yeah, I like that. And if someone wanted to reach out to you specifically, where would they be able to reach you?
So, I have 2 links I can drop in the chat. So, number 1, if you're enjoying this conversation today, and you wanna learn more, so the link in the chat is, a little form that you can fill out, and if you check both the boxes on there, you'll get, ongoing communications from me, and also you'll get a mini Bible study on decluttering that I wrote a while back, which I think is really good. If you We talked a little bit about, a couple verses in the Bible today, but, there's some more in there. And then, if you wanna reach out to me, you can do so on my website, and I also put that in the chat.
Okay,
But
great.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's elenasdeclutter.com. And then yeah, the link to the Bible study, as yeah, as she said, she'll put that in the chat. But also then for those who might be watching this later on YouTube, the links to everything will be in the description of the video here below.
So what I would leave you with is that, you can trust God. You can trust God, with your stuff. And so if God is calling you to let go of some stuff, to create some more peace in your life, that you can trust Him with that. And by letting some things go, you are creating space for what God is calling you to do, whether that is moving to a new place to go to school or for a new job. You need to downsize to move, or if you are being called into ministry and you need to have less stuff at home so you can focus on things outside of the home, or if you are just being called to start a small business of crafting something inside your home and you need a little room for that project and the energy to do that. Whatever God is calling you to do, that probably requires a little bit of downsizing. So you can trust God that it doesn't matter if you downsize the wrong thing or a few things that maybe you really wish you would have kept, that God's got you.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for tuning into this month's episode. We hope you were blessed by it. Again, if you'd like to get into contact with Elena, be sure to check the video description below for her details. Next time, we'll be chatting with my friend David about the good life. What it is it attainable, and where do we get it? I hope you'll join live or watch it after. Thanks again for watching today. Please share your comments with us below and make sure to like the video. Blessings.